Welcome. My name is Danielle Rushton. I'm the marketing manager for one of the South Coast's leading law firms, Verisona Law. Today we've gathered with the heads of team for our commercial and private client services to discuss the one topic that's on everyone's minds, Brexit, and how it will affect you, your business and your future.
I head up Verisona's corporate and commercial team, and one of the questions I'm asked when speaking to business owners is what effect will Brexit have on the business? And from a legislation-led point of view, I think the honest answer is that at the moment it's just too early to tell. We don't yet know who is even going to be negotiating Brexit on our behalf, let alone what policy changes that will create on our statute books. But that doesn't mean that businesses need to just sit back and let Brexit happen to them. Now is the perfect opportunity for businesses to look at their processes, their functions, their footprint, and to examine whether they are best placed now to deal with Brexit when it happens in 2 years' time.
I head up the residential property team. All the remaining Brexiteers said there would be a market crash. Locally, we didn't have any of those issues, although other parts of the country did. We have a steady flow of work coming in, and I think the upcoming election has slowed our department down somewhat. People are a little bit nervous to see what is actually going to happen.
I'm Nigel Cole, I'm a director of Verisona. We all know that June's EU referendum has caused shockwaves across the political and economic life of this country and perhaps of Europe. What we've now got to consider is how it might affect the legal system in this country, because our legal system is irretrievably intertwined with EU laws.
Very interesting listening to Stephen, and I certainly pick up his point about the difference tariffs may make, and looking now at providing in commercial agreements perhaps a way out, an exit strategy if tariffs are unaffordable, is certainly very sound. But the beauty, or perhaps the main problem with the current situation we all find ourselves in, is that everything we're saying here today is utterly speculative. And picking up Nigel's point about regulation and access to justice, my understanding is that the intention is that on day one, the existing legislation, the existing EC directives, access to justice and so on, will be enshrined as it stands into English law. And it's only thereafter that we'll start nibbling away at the edges of it and changing things. So I don't think we should be too dramatic about what's going to happen come Brexit Day. Brexit Day, I don't believe, will change anything very much, very quickly.
I'm Julian DiGiovanni, and I'm head of the property development and general commercial property teams at Verisona Law. In terms of property development, we act for a number of small-scale developers in and around Portsmouth, along the south coast, and up the A3 corridor into London. In terms of general commercial property, we act for a wide range of SME businesses, private individuals, banks, law property act receivers and insolvency practitioners. In terms of property law itself, post-Brexit, we're expecting very few changes in terms of commercial property law. But what I think we're looking for is decisive action and certainty, because that's what investors want. The UK is considered a safe haven in terms of property investment, particularly in London, and obviously we want that to continue.
Our insolvency and business turnaround team helps private and commercial clients deal with insolvency-related issues, whether that's businesses or individuals in financial difficulty, or those that they owe money to, the creditors, be they trade creditors, landlords or financial institutions. In addition to that, we also provide technical advice, legal support and litigation services to insolvency practitioners based both regionally and nationally. In terms of the impact of Brexit on the work that we do as a team and our clients, I think this really breaks down into two areas. There's the economic impact of Brexit and the fallout from that, particularly as it turns into situations and type of situations and volume of situations that our sector has to deal with. And secondly, there's the legal impact in terms of the changes to the structures and the procedures that our team and those that we work with use to deal with.
Well, I'm going to talk about the marine industry, but in many ways the marine industry is probably a bellwether for industry generally. I've been around the marine industry for the best part of 40 years, and so I can remember, certainly from an industry perspective, a time before we were actually effective working members of the EU when we had an independent manufacturing sector. The marine industry is quite representative, I guess, of UK industry generally. At the moment, the total turnover of the UK marine industry is 3 billion, contributes 6.2 billion in gross value to GDP, supports 33,000 jobs directly, and probably twice that indirectly. In terms of exports at the moment, the UK exports more than half its production, 27.4% going to the EU, the rest going to emerging markets and to America. So it's no small industry in the great scheme of things, and it's, as I say, a fairly accurate reflection, I guess, of the car industry and our other generally sort of high brand manufacturing sectors.
I'm Sue Ball and I head up the employment team at Verisona Law. Primarily I act for employer clients, but I also see employee clients. And I think it's fair to say whichever side of that fence you sit upon, most people would think that a lot of our employment protection stems from EU legislation of one sort or another. As Nigel quite rightly said, much of EU regulation is entwined with our domestic law, and it would be, I think, in many ways a brave UK government that tried to completely unravel that. Interestingly, I think in some respects, employment is probably one of the least uncertain areas of law in terms of what the impact of Brexit will be. And I say that for a number of reasons. To some degree, we do, of course, have employment protection, whether that comes from domestic law or EU regulation. But in many ways, a lot of those issues which are governed, I suppose, by those regulations and legislation are really fundamental human rights, or what we think of as fundamental basic rights these days. So the right not to be discriminated against because of your race or your sex or your gender, etc. We don't necessarily rely totally on legislation to have that within our society. But of course the legislation backs up what we think of as those rights. In some areas of law, we had protection that was embodied in UK law before the EU came along. So for example, equal pay was part of our fabric of protection way before the EU told us what to do about that, and similarly with disability discrimination. Again, we had those rights prior to the EU. So where people are concerned that they will lose some of their protected rights as workers or employees, I don't think that's the case.